Gentrification seems to be a topic that talks about that has become a sexier topic, more discussed as time goes on. What exists, and you definitely gave a great context leading into this and starting this speech. Mm-hmm. What is housing? And really, what does residency look like for Black Detroit right now, for the families, for the people looking to start families? And then expand even housing to land itself, even for people that want to run businesses or community centers or just have spaces to share.
Right.
What's the importance of that 2022 right now for Black Detroit?
So just building off what I said in the beginning, there's like 4 houses that has been a cornerstone of my life. There was a house on Elmhurst between Livernois and I-96. All my grandmothers and her brothers and sisters, like that was that first house. They lived in right around the corner on Tuxedo between the same area. My grandfather owned that house. He still owns. He still lives there today. My auntie, when she got old enough and started her family, she moved off on Indiana in Puritan. My cousin still owns that house, and then the house here on Ferry Park. Like, so, ownership of houses is always, when I think back, has always been part of my life. It's always been instrumental, and I think in all of our lives, right? We've gotten away from, because of this, like oppression, and it's so slick that you get a good job, or you get what you think is a good job, and you shift. You lose. We lost our connection to our struggle. We lost our connection to our legacy. That's a legacy. That's like, you can't learn that in school. You learned that right from your family. You learned that from your grandmother and your uncle, and the importance of holding on. And it's something in our minds that has tricked us to, I'd rather live in an apartment. I'd rather live in these new fancy places that I don't own. Again, and this is where, versus owning a $30,000 car that runs well, to trying to own a $100,000 car that you're paying a note on, and it makes you look a certain way. So it comes back to self-worth. Like, we're trying to have our self-worth tied to material things. I mean, even like going to the drug trade, right? You have a guy who invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a car, but don't even own the house that he lives in. Don't even own the house that he lives in. Because again, he lost that education. So again, when land is essential to freedom. Malcolm taught us land is essential to self-determination. Land is essential to independence. Like, land is the only thing they're not making more of. Right? And so what they've done, they've tricked us out of it because we've lost and we devalue the importance of land. But then there's a few of us who still understand it, but they're doing it from an individual standpoint. They're not doing it from a collective. Like, so like people are telling me, like, man, why you ain't about all this stuff? Because again, I'm not trying to be the man. I'm trying to be a part of a process. Because fundamentally, if you own everything, that means that's the problem with the king situation. Like, everybody has to look up to the king. He or she, but ultimately somebody wants to knock the king off. Because somebody wants to be the next king. So, I mean, housing is part of that philosophy of helping us understand it is the cornerstone of our peace. It is the cornerstone of our tranquility. It is the cornerstone of our liberation. The housing also has to transition to the ideology of understanding it is the foundation for a family. It is the foundation for building something. And so if we don't have that, we have what we have now. Scatteredness, confusion. Every man, every woman, every person for themselves. And so the ability to be able to, houses in Detroit are still relatively cheap compared to other places. But we have not done like an inventory. Like, who could do carpeting? Who could do roofing? Who could do flooring? Right? But who's willing to do these things? Not necessarily always for capital. It could be social capital. And these are part of these deeper conversations. Because again, if you talk to somebody, same thing like a child. Hey, what do you want to do when you graduate from high school? I want to go to college. They may not mean that, but that's what they've been conditioned. You talk to an adult, like, man, I want to own my own house. Where do I begin? And so we suffer not only from the lack of knowing who we are, but the lack of knowing how to operate within the system, and how there's resources out there, but they're not. They're coming in our communities scarcely of how to utilize those. And by the time we learn about it, it's too late, or we're not sharing it with each other. So it's so many dynamics to it. But I think to your other part of your question, like we have to transition. How do we reposition ourselves? How do we do business and things? So I would have never dreamed in a million years to turn a house into a community center. It's not the first time it's been done. But for me, the aha came like, why wouldn't I want to do that, right? But also, I think we have to begin to create opportunities to with the housing market still being what it is in Detroit. Like, hey, let's commit ourselves to purchasing some of these houses and duplicating these community spaces throughout the city of Detroit, but also creating, like, people are still buying houses, but it's a hustle. They're doing you're allowing people to stay in them, but are you genuinely trying to, like, ultimately turn the house over to the person to own? And now that shit comes back to values. And I think we have to question what our values are. That will help determine, how we serve people. Because all this shit is nothing but a tool. The car we drive, the house that we live in, the clothes, the money, it's all a tool. As they say, the old folks say, you ain't taking that shit in the casket with you. So how are you utilizing that to help other people, but also helping yourself?